My name's Ray Parker, and I've been a truck driver for 12 years. It's not glamorous work, but it pays the bills, and I like the solitude. You get to know the road in a way most people don't. There's a rhythm to it, like music. But there's one night that sticks with me, something that broke the rhythm. It was late summer, and I'd picked up a load of agricultural equipment from Bakersfield, California, headed to Tucson, Arizona. It was a standard haul, nothing out of the ordinary. I planned to cut across a lonely desert stretch, a 2-lane highway where you could drive for miles without seeing another soul. Fewer eyes meant fewer distractions, or so I thought. I started the trip late in the day to avoid the sweltering heat. By the time I hit the desert, the sun had dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of purple and red. It was peaceful at first, just the hum of the engine and the occasional crackle of the CB radio. Around 10 p.m., I noticed headlights in my mirrors. At first, it was just one set, a lone trucker following me. Nothing unusual there. But a few miles later, another set of lights joined, then another. By the time I glanced back again, there were at least 4 rigs trailing behind me, their lights cutting through the dark like silent predators. I slowed down a little, figuring they'd pass. It's not uncommon for truckers to form convoys, but usually there's chatter about it on the CB. I switched to channel 19. "Evening, fellas," I said. "Y'all forming a line back there?" Static. I repeated myself. Nothing. The rig stayed behind me, not too close, but not far enough to feel normal. I told myself it was nothing, probably just a group of independent drivers who didn't feel like talking. But something felt off. After another 20 minutes, I decided to let them pass. I slowed to a crawl and pulled onto the shoulder. The rigs slowed too, keeping their distance. They didn't pass me. "Suit yourselves," I muttered, pulling back onto the highway. My palms were sweaty now, gripping the wheel tighter than I needed to. The desert has a way of amplifying your fears. It's too quiet, too empty. Every creak of the truck, every gust of wind feels like it's coming for you. I tried to shake the unease, turning up the radio. Willie Nelson crooned about life on the road, but it didn't help. An hour passed, maybe more. The rigs were still there, maintaining their eerie silence. I tried not to think about it, but my mind wouldn't let it go. Why weren't they trying to pass? Why weren't they talking? Then the lights started flashing. It began with the rig directly behind me. Its high beams flickered twice, then stayed on, blinding me in my mirrors. A second later, the truck on my left flashed its lights too, then the one on the right. "All right, what the hell is this?" I hissed, grabbing the CB. "Whoever's back there, cut it out. This ain't funny." Still no response. I eased off the accelerator, trying to stay calm. They were toying with me, but why? Was it some kind of hazing? A prank? That's when the truck on my left sped up, pulling alongside me. I caught a glimpse of the cab, but the windows were tinted so dark I couldn't see the driver. The rig matched my speed, hugging the yellow line like it was trying to push me off the road. I glanced to my right. Another truck was closing in. They were boxing me in. My heart pounded as I gripped the wheel. I couldn't stop. Not here. There was nothing but desert for miles. If I pulled over, I'd be at their mercy. I pressed the pedal harder, coaxing every ounce of speed out of my Freightliner. The truck on my left fell back, but the one on my right kept pace, its trailer swaying dangerously close to mine. "Stop this!" I shouted into the CB. "What do you want?" No answer. The headlights behind me loomed closer, practically kissing my bumper. I felt trapped, suffocated by the convoy. They were toying with me, but why? I hadn't cut anyone off, hadn't taken anyone's load. This didn't make sense. The truck on my right suddenly veered closer, forcing me onto the rumble strip. The vibrations rattled my teeth. My hands shook on the wheel as I fought to keep control. Then, as suddenly as it began, they backed off. One by one, the rigs peeled away, disappearing into the darkness. Within minutes, I was alone again, the road stretching ahead like nothing had happened. I pulled into the next truck stop, heart racing, hands still trembling. The place was empty, except for a lone cashier inside the brightly lit convenience store. I stumbled out of my cab and walked inside, desperate for human contact. "You all right?" the cashier asked, eyeing me warily. Did a group of trucks come through here?" I stammered. She shook her head. "You're the first one I've seen in hours." I didn't sleep that night, parked in the far corner of the lot, the engine idling for comfort. I didn't touch the CB radio again until I reached Tucson. I've told a few people about it, but no one believes me. They say it was probably a misunderstanding, a coincidence, but I know what I saw. Whoever they were, they wanted me to feel helpless, to know they had control, and they succeeded. Before we dive into the next story, if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Your support means the world to us. Thanks for watching. The highway stretched on endlessly, a dark and empty ribbon cutting through the barren Texas desert. My rig hummed steadily beneath me as I hauled a load of construction equipment to El Paso. It was one of those quiet nights where the loneliness of the road gets into your head, the only sound the occasional rustle of wind or distant coyote howl. I wasn't expecting trouble, but trouble has a way of finding you when you least expect it. It was just after midnight when I spotted the roadblock. Two black SUVs were parked nose to nose across both lanes, their high beams cutting through the darkness. Standing in the middle of the road was a man with a flashlight, signaling for me to stop. Immediately, my gut told me something was off. This wasn't a standard checkpoint. There were no cones, no reflective signs, just the SUVs, the man, and a heavy silence that made my skin crawl. But what choice did I have? There was no way around, and plowing through didn't seem like the smartest option. I slowed to a stop about 20 feet from the SUVs, my headlights casting long shadows across the scene. The man with the flashlight walked up to my door, his face partially obscured by the glare. He was wearing a dark tactical jacket, clean and official looking, but something about his demeanor didn't sit right. "Evening, sir," he said, his voice calm but cold. "We're conducting a routine cargo inspection. Please step out of the vehicle." "Cargo inspection?" I repeated, my fingers tightening on the wheel. "Haven't heard about any inspections on this route." The man pulled a badge from his jacket and held it up. It looked legitimate at first glance, a laminated card with his name, photo, and a federal-looking seal. But I'd been on the road long enough to know what real law enforcement looks like, and something about this didn't add up. "This is an authorized operation," he said, his tone sharper now. "Please step out of the truck." Reluctantly, I opened the door and climbed down, my boots hitting the pavement with a dull thud. As soon as I was on the ground, two more men stepped out of the SUVs. They were dressed the same as the first guy, but their movements were stiff, like they were trying too hard to look official. "Mind telling me what this is about?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Routine check," the leader said, motioning toward the trailer. "We're looking for a specific vehicle. Your cooperation is appreciated." While he spoke, the other two men split up, one heading toward the back of my rig and the other circling the cab. The one by the trailer ran his hand along the side, checking my plates, but he didn't even glance at the seals or locks. The guy by the cab peered into the windows but didn't touch anything. They weren't inspecting my cargo. They were looking for something or someone else. "Look," I said, forcing a casual tone, "I'm hauling Caterpillar parts. Nothing illegal here." The leader gave me a tight smile. "We'll see about that. Open the trailer." My stomach tightened. This wasn't normal. If they were legitimate, they'd have asked for my manifest or bill of lading by now. Still, I couldn't exactly refuse. "Sure," I said, walking toward the back of the truck. One of the men followed me, his hand resting on his hip, where I could just make out the handle of a pistol. My pulse quickened. I fumbled with the lock, trying to act like my nerves weren't shot, and swung the trailer doors open. Inside were rows of crated machinery, just like I'd said. The man with the gun climbed up and poked around with a flashlight, but it was half-hearted at best. He wasn't interested in the cargo. "Nothing here," he called back. The leader looked disappointed. He stepped closer, his gaze locking onto mine like he was trying to read my thoughts. "This your usual route?" he asked. "Yeah," I lied. He tilted his head, studying me. The silence stretched uncomfortably long, broken only by the hum of my idling engine. "All right," he said finally. "You're free to go." I didn't move. Something in his voice made my skin crawl. "Thanks," I said, trying to sound casual as I backed toward the cab. My eyes darted to the two men who hadn't returned to their SUVs. They were still watching me, their postures tense, like they were waiting for a signal. I climbed into the truck and locked the doors, my hands trembling as I started the engine. As I pulled away, I checked my mirrors. The SUVs stayed where they were, their headlights burning into the darkness. It wasn't until I was a mile down the road that I realized I was shaking. Those men weren't cops. I didn't know who they were or what they wanted, but they weren't interested in me or my load. They were hunting for someone else. And whoever it was, I had a feeling they weren't going to get the same polite send-off I did. When I reached the next way station, I reported the incident to the troopers. They took my statement and promised to investigate, but their skepticism was written all over their faces. Could have been private security, one of them said. Sometimes companies run their own inspections. But we both knew that wasn't the case. To this day, I avoid that stretch of highway whenever I can, because whoever they were, whatever they were after, they weren't playing by the rules. And if I'd been the truck they were looking for, I doubt I'd be here to tell the story. 8 years ago, I was still new to long-haul trucking. I was 29, full of energy, and thought I'd seen enough of the world to handle whatever it threw at me. Back then, I didn't know better. Some lessons stick with you for life, and this one gets under your skin. I was hauling a refrigerated load of frozen chicken from Kansas City to Denver, running a route I'd done a dozen times before. It was early October, just cold enough for the windows to fog up if you weren't careful. The highway stretched out in front of me like an endless gray ribbon, nothing but headlights and mile markers to keep me company. It was around 10:30 p.m. when I spotted him. He was standing on the shoulder of the road, barely visible in the wash of my high beams. He had on a dark hoodie, the kind of thing you'd expect a college kid to wear, with his thumb out like some throwback to the 70s. I'd always heard you shouldn't pick up hitchhikers, but something about him didn't scream danger. He looked young, maybe 19 or 20, with a lanky frame and a face that seemed more desperate than threatening. Against my better judgment, I pulled over. Maybe it was the loneliness of the road getting to me, or maybe I just didn't want to be the guy who left a kid stranded in the middle of nowhere. "You need a ride?" I called out as he jogged up to the cab. "Yeah, thanks, man. My car broke down a few miles back," he said, his breath visible in the cool night air. "I'm just trying to get to Denver." "Hop in," I said, unlocking the passenger door. He climbed in, carrying nothing but a small backpack. As we got rolling, he settled into the seat, fidgeting with the straps of his bag. "Name's Ray," I said, trying to break the ice. "Ethan," he replied, offering a faint smile. We talked for a while, mostly small talk. He said he was from Wichita, heading to Denver to visit his sister. Something about his story felt a little rehearsed, but I didn't press him. Everyone's got their secrets. After about an hour, I noticed he was staring out the window, his hands clutching the backpack like it was the only thing keeping him grounded. "You okay?" I asked. "Yeah," he said, his voice barely audible. "Just tired." I figured that was my cue to let him be. We drove in silence for a while, the hum of the engine filling the cab. But something felt off. I've got a gut for these things. It's what keeps you alive on the road. I glanced at him out of the corner of my eye. He wasn't just tired. He looked like he was weighing something, like he was trapped in his own head. I decided to keep talking, hoping to ease the tension. "So, what's in the bag? Looks like it's got some weight to it." His grip on the bag tightened, and for a split second, his eyes met mine. There was something in them I didn't like, something sharp, calculating. "Just clothes," he said quickly. Too quickly. My palms started sweating. I kept my voice calm, steady. "You sure? Looks more like tools or something." He didn't answer. The silence was unbearable. My mind started racing. What if he had a weapon in there? What if he was planning to rob me, or worse? Then he spoke. "You ever do something you regret?" he asked, his voice low. "Everyone's got regrets," I said carefully. "Why?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he unzipped the backpack, just enough for me to catch a glimpse of what was inside. A large hunting knife and a bundle of clothes stained dark red. My stomach dropped. I kept my eyes on the road, my heart pounding so loud I thought he could hear it. "You can let me out at the next stop," he said, his tone calm but firm. I nodded, trying to act like I hadn't seen anything. "Sure thing." The next exit was still 15 miles away, but it felt like an eternity. I kept my breathing steady, my hands loose on the wheel, all the while planning my next move. When we finally reached the exit, I pulled into a gas station. The place was lit up like a Christmas tree, with a few cars parked out front. My chances of getting help were slim, but it was better than nothing. "This good?" I asked, forcing a casual tone. "Yeah," he said, opening the door. "Thanks for the ride." He stepped out, slinging the backpack over his shoulder. For a moment, I thought about confronting him, about calling the cops. But as he walked away, I realized how stupid that would have been. Whatever he'd done, or planned to do, was none of my business. I watched him disappear into the night, his figure swallowed by the darkness. I sat there for a long time, the engine idling, my mind replaying every detail of the ride. I didn't call the cops, I didn't tell anyone, but I never picked up another hitchhiker. Not once. Looking back, I wonder if I made the right choice. Maybe I could have stopped him from hurting someone else. Or maybe I just saved my own skin. 8 years later, I still think about Ethan, about the knife, about the blood. And every time I do, I wonder if he's out there telling the same story to someone else.